Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this edition of Creating the Future with me, Dr. Brent Simpson, where we are always going to be diving into stories and truths and deep questions that help shape your future, your families, and of course, your faith. I'm filming today from my home studio where we're diving into something interesting, a question that I think everybody wrestles with from time to time, and that is the question of why did God make me? What am I here for? What is my unique purpose? And by the way, this is a bridge from the Sunday message. If you haven't heard that, I'll put it in the show notes, but we did a message on joy on Sunday, and I can tell you this, you'll never find true joy until you find your unique purpose that God created you for. Now, with that being said, and as we get going, I wonder, have you ever used a screwdriver as a hammer? I know I'm very guilty of that, right? I'll grab the screwdriver just because it's handy, turn around backwards to nail something into a wall or something like that. And it kind of works for sure. You can make it work, but it also wears out much, much faster. Now, here's the thing you need to understand. When you work outside of your intended purpose, you wear out much faster. It's not the way you were designed to function. And so if you are feeling worn out too, it might be because you're outside of your intended purpose. Maybe you're taking on too much or too little or the wrong thing. With that being said, Proverbs 16:4 says, "The Lord has made everything for his own purposes." Listen, you were created by God on purpose and for God's purpose. So let's talk about that today on Creating the Future. All right, as we begin this conversation, we really have to start here, and that is that you were designed with purpose. I know we live in an evolutionary-based world nowadays, and people will tell you that you were just a matter of chance and time, but I'm saying that you were designed with purpose in mind by a creator, and no creator, no manufacturer, so to speak, creates anything without having a purpose behind it. Whether we're talking about Apple or Nike or Levi's or Ford, every product has a reason. You are no accident, and God had a reason for creating you. And when we look at the creation account, we find that after God created things, he looked at them and he said, "It's good. It is good." Over and over and over, we hear that phrase, "It is good." Well, it is good because it's doing its intended purpose. When you fulfill your purpose, that is good. And your life ultimately brings joy to God, just like a parent who loves to watch their child grow up and stumble and walk and play and have fun and work and all those different things. That's how your life works as well before the Lord. When you are doing your intended purpose, it is beautiful to the Lord. And purpose matters. I mean, we live in this world right now where everybody's talking about purpose. It's amazing to me that we live in America where we have everything in the world externally, but internally we often lack purpose. In fact, The Purpose-Driven Life, the book written by Rick Warren, has sold over 32 million copies worldwide. It's actually one of the best-selling Christian books, nonfiction Christian books or something like that of all time. It's crazy. In that book, he says, "The greatest tragedy is not death, but life without purpose." Think about that. Mark Twain would say that the two most important days in a person's life are the day they are born and the day they find out why. Without purpose, we're kind of like Alice in Wonderland. And in the conversation she has with the Cheshire Cat, Alice asks, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go?" "That depends a good deal on where you want to go," said the cat. "I don't much care," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. Man, that paints a picture of the way we look at our purpose sometimes, because if you don't have a clear purpose for your life, you can kind of go any direction, right? So let's start unpacking this. What is my purpose? Let me go from the general purpose, the big picture purpose, down to the specific purpose, and then give you some questions that I think are going to help you find your specific purpose God created for you. But generally speaking of all humankind, it's true of a few things. Let's break it down. Number one, you are here to love God, right? Matthew 22, Jesus would say, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. right? That's all worship. When you are loving God, when you are doing your intended purpose, that is worship. Worship is so much more than just singing, whether it's big or small things. When you are doing what you were created to do, that is worship unto the Lord. And as I mentioned a moment ago, it is good. So secondly, you're called to love God, but secondly, you're called to love people. Your purpose is to love people. You were created for community, so to speak. That's why Matthew 22, Jesus would also say that you love your neighbor as yourself in this great commandment. God calls us into relationship, not isolation, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to find your purpose outside of community. I would say the same thing about joy, as we've been talking about that in our church. It's very hard to find joy outside of community as well, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit this coming Sunday. And then thirdly, I would say, I'm here to become like Christ. These are general principles of all humanity. We are here to love God, we're here to love each other, and we're here to become like Christ. Romans 8 would say that we are here to be conformed to the image of his Son. And part of that is serving, because God serves, right? I think that's part of loving your neighbor. It's also becoming like Christ. Jesus was the great servant of us, of humanity. And 1 Peter 4:10 would say, each of you should use whatever gift you have been given to serve each others. So we got to recognize that God has created us with these general principles. In fact, Rabbi Harold Kushner writes this. He said, our souls are not hungry for fame, comfort, wealth, or power. Those rewards create almost as many problems as they solve. Our souls are hungry for meaning, for the sense that we have figured out how to live so that our lives matter, so that the world will be at least a little bit different for us having passed through it. Listen, a powerful shift happens, and this is important even before you get into the specifics of your unique calling. A powerful shift starts to happen when we refocus ourselves and start focusing on others. When we love God, when we love others, and we start serving others, something incredible begins to happen. When you move from being Daniel LaRusso to being Mr. Miyagi, and you realize that you're not the center of the story. I think human nature is that we want to put ourselves in the center of the story. But to actually create true legacy and live a life that matters and make a difference in the world, you actually have to recognize how we are serving one another. And it's actually a far more powerful role to play to be Mr. Miyagi than it is to be Daniel LaRusso. But again, most of us in our world and the way we were brought up, it's all about me, 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 me. And so we see ourselves as the hero of the story, when I think a powerful shift happens when we start to realize that our lives need to revolve around helping others reach their potential and not just ourselves. So now let's get to the focus of this podcast. All right, we talked about general things of God's purpose for your life and why you are here. Now let's get to the personal things. What is my unique purpose? And this is where so many of us get stuck. And so right off the bat, I have to explain something, and that is the difference between a job and your work. Your job is what you get paid to do. Your work is what you were created to do. Your job is temporary. Your work is actually eternal. Even in heaven, you're going to have work. But work is good when it's inside of your intended purpose. So you could look at Jesus. Jesus's job was a carpenter, but his work was redeeming humankind. Your job is temporary, it pays the bills, but your work is eternal and it fulfills the souls of humanity. It's a powerful distinction when you can separate these two. Your job uses your skills, but your work uses your gifts. And this is important. You can't be fired. You can be fired from your job, but you can't be fired from your work. Here's the thing, if you dread every Monday morning, it might be because you're living for your job instead of your purpose or your work. And it's important that as we start this process of finding your unique purpose, that you recognize that there is a job, and you probably work at a job, but then there is work which is far deeper and incorporates your purpose. So how does this work practically? Well, I would say this, and not everybody would agree with this, but this is my opinion. I would say that your purpose came pre-installed by your creator, your manufacturer, so to speak, right? You were born not trying to find your purpose, but you were born with your purpose already inside of you. This is an important distinction because so many times people are running after purpose and trying to find purpose everywhere instead of actually looking inward at how God created them and what their inner desires when met with the Lord are and finding their purpose there. It's kind of like this, like I don't know about you, but I'm sure all of us have this experience that when you bought your phone, it came preloaded with all kinds of apps. There were tons of apps that are on the phone that I cannot even delete. So in my personal phone, I have a junk folder where I put all of those preloaded apps in the junk folder because they're not things I'm ever going to use. They just sit there. Okay. But those apps were preloaded onto the phone. I would say that you are preloaded with purpose. But like those apps, sometimes we don't stop to reflect on them. We don't stop to look at them. We don't stop to look at like what is already in me that God put inside of me. And sometimes we have to recognize that our destiny is not out there somewhere. Sometimes our destiny is actually trapped inside of us, just waiting to be unlocked. And so we're going to look at some of these things of how to pull this destiny out of us. So let me give you 5 questions that'll help you find your unique purpose. And you may want to write these down. I'll definitely put these in the show notes, but you may want to write these down. And I'm going to challenge you in a few moments to make sure that you spend time reflecting on these, okay? So number 1, the big question to start. What do I cry about? What are the things that break my heart? What are the things that when you see it, it just devastates you? There's a good chance that somewhere in your purpose, those things are there. Because the truth is, and you know this, some of those things that devastate you don't devastate other people. It doesn't affect them nearly as much as it affects you. But to you, you will cry about these things. Well, maybe that's part of God drawing you towards this purpose in your unique giftings and your unique calling. The second question is very similar, but it's the opposite end. What do I sing about? What do I sing about? What do I think like this is the most amazing thing in the world? I'll stay up at night being excited about this when I see it. When this particular thing is done, I'm just like, this is the best thing ever. And it makes you so joyful inside that you could literally sing about it, even if you're not a singer, right? So what do I cry about and what do I sing about? That's 2 opposite extremes of the same type of question. And both of those are going to point toward your unique purpose. Thirdly, I'm going to ask you this. What do I dream about? What do I dream about? That's a little bit different because your dreams are things going, if everything just worked out, what could I do? What could be done? And ask those sort of questions that are not limited based on what the skill set I have or the money I have or this and that, but you start dreaming about what could be done. And where your dreams come up inside of you, sometimes that's part of your intended purpose that God created in you to have. Fourthly, I would say this, and it's kind of 2 questions, but I'm going to put it together, and I've said this many times. Many of you have had moments where I kind of taught this to you one-on-one, but the question is, what am I good at, followed by, what do I enjoy doing? What do I love doing? So if you were to picture a scope on a rifle, right, so you have a line this way and a line this way that makes kind of a crosshairs on your scope, then I would say, what am I good at? All right, so what do I have these unique giftings that God have given me that I'm good at? And then I want to look at what do I love doing? And where those 2 things line up, that's quite possibly part of my intended purpose. That's quite possibly part of why God created me to be here. And if you can line those 2 things up in your life, you're gonna find joy all the time because you're good at something and you enjoy doing it. You're gonna bless the world. You're gonna serve the world by blessing them, but you're also gonna enjoy doing it as you do it, right? Now, this is important because what am I good at? Sometimes I'm good at things I don't enjoy, right? There could be an engineer who's good at math, but they don't necessarily enjoy math, right? Sometimes you can enjoy something that you're not good at. Lots of people enjoy singing and they're not necessarily good at singing, right? We don't want those people on the stage. They can sing in the shower all they want. So they might enjoy singing, but they're not good at singing. But what am I good at and what do I love doing? Where those 2 things line up, that could be pointing towards the target of your purpose. All right, the 5th question that I'm going to ask you is where do I enjoy the journey, not just the destination? Where do I enjoy the journey, not just the destination? So oftentimes in our lives, we create these ideal destinations, these things in our minds. It's part of the materialistic world that we live in, especially in America, that like, I just want this thing out here or that thing out there. And if I had this job, that would be amazing. But you don't actually love the journey of the job. Here's the truth. If you don't love the journey, you'll never make it to the destination. You'll quit. So find a place that you actually love the process, the systems, the journey, not just the destination. If you're an NFL football player, you can't just love getting to the Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl. That may or may not ever happen. You got to love getting up early and working out and going to training camps and sweating in the heat and all of that. And if you love that, you might get to the destination. But if you don't love that, you'll never get to the destination, okay? So the question is, where do I enjoy the journey, not just the destination? Now, these questions point towards the fingerprint of God that He has put on your life. And as I start to wrap up, I want to say this. If you're going to fulfill your purpose, you cannot live for the approval of others. There's going to be things that come up in your mind that you think, oh, I could do this or I could do that. And people are going to talk you out of it. Fear often masquerades as wisdom. So don't let other people's opinions of you or fear of what people are going to think, or even fear that you could or could not do this, actually thwart you from your destiny and your purpose. I don't think that's God's intention at all. In fact, I would say there's a good chance that what you were preloaded in your birth when you were little and you started thinking about what you wanted to be when you grow up, there's probably something that God put in there from start that might be at least in the same category or genre or area of your intended purpose later on. I remember one time I was counseling with a couple and somehow it came up about their callings and things like that. And I said, what did you want to be when you were young? I said, what did you want to be when you were a child? And the husband started responding back quickly, and the wife started crying. And so I asked the wife, I said, where do those tears come from? And she responded back to me. She said, when I was little, all I ever wanted to be was a mom. That's all I ever wanted to be. And I love being a mom. But in the world, they told me that I have to make money and I have to get a career. And if I'm going to be a real woman, then I have to do these things. Listen, there's nothing wrong with career. There's nothing wrong with making money. But that was not maybe the intended purpose that God created her to have. And so therefore, she had money and a career, but she didn't have joy. She didn't have the peace of God. Instead, she had sacrificed those things for money and a career. Listen, fear often masquerades as wisdom. And somebody might have told you, you can't do this career because you're not good enough, or you can't do this career because it doesn't pay enough money, or what have you. But I'm telling you that if you really want to live out your purpose, you're going to stand out of the crowd. You're going to be different. You may take jobs that make less money. You may take different career paths than other people take. You're going to stand out of the crowd. You're going to be different. You're going to be special. But that's how God created you to be. God made you for a purpose, on purpose, and for a purpose. You're not a mistake. You are a masterpiece. So as I begin to wrap up this podcast, let me give you these 5 questions real quickly again, and then maybe a little bit of a bonus at the end, but 5 questions, and I challenge you to process and think through these questions deeply, because the most powerful thing you will ever experience in your life is realizing why God put me here. So the questions are, number 1, what do I cry about? Number 2, what do I sing about? Number 3, what do I dream about? Number 4, what am I good at and I love doing, and where those 2 things meet? And number 5, where do I enjoy the journey, not just the destination? And then I'm going to throw that bonus out there for you as well. I call it a number 6 or a bonus. What was it when I was young, when I was little, that I desperately wanted to be when I grow up? And that may be in there a little bit as well. All right, with all that being said, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I hope it's been beneficial to you. I hope it's been encouraging, and I hope it's been practical that you can actually step into the purpose that God designed you to have. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor and make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure that you like the podcast. You may want to share this episode with some people that you think it might be beneficial for them to watch or hear it. And if you're listening to it on any place where podcasting is at, make sure that you rate and review, and that helps us to continue to get these things out that hopefully are benefiting you. And hey, keep dreaming, keep building, and keep creating the future God designed for you to create.